From where he sat, he could see the whole of Elmsville. If Adam listened to his wife the way Harry does, we'd all still be in the Garden of Eden. When he was young, but now that he's old, too much like himself, not enough like himself. Exactly. Not quite. To every idiotic voice that babbled in her mind, she would say, "Yes, dear. Tell me more." They acted as though there was something they were trying to figure out, a single thing they were working on, and for which they'd find a solution. The things they think, the things they say, don't care what they think. Don't care what they say. If you have any idea at all of what it's like to be me, nothing you've ever said or done would give me a chance to think so. If life was such an easy thing to get a grip on, we'd all have a grip by now. "Get out," she said. "You don't even begin to know who I am." "What are you?" he said. "The Queen of Sheba?" "A lot more than that," she said. This here is a prayer hall, see? And that hole at the top, is what the prayers go up through. Is what he is, says what he says, thinks what he thinks, does what he does. Laughs when he laughs, cries when he cries. Their faces came to him in dreams. Their voices sounded in his mind. Upstairs, dancing. Downstairs, tears. He'd even forgotten the name of the man who taught him to empty his mind. Had gotten clubbed over the head for being an Armenian. If there was anything she liked, it was making quilts. Anything she hated, it was quilting bees. One day he discovered he could talk as he liked, without being either drunk or on stage. What would I do if I were X? I would live forever and ever and ever. I would make all things good, make all things well, bless the plants and bless the trees, bless the hills, bless the seas, give children visions and old men dreams, speak through prophets and answer prayers, give joy where there was sorrow, bring peace where there was war. I would speak comfortingly to my people. Charlie Stress walked down the street to his office on Nerve Gas Avenue. It's a fine new day in the city of man, a day of joy and accomplishment. That's what the doctor had told him to say, and it seemed to be having its effect. Looked over the situation and decided, cut and trimmed to last 100 years. She said life was her religion. All he could do was wonder what she meant. Then why did he say, I love you because you're you? That's just a plain you. Dream question from young Greek lady. Where is Berkelite Academy, please? What am I being transformed into at this moment? Wondered Alice. What he liked about flaming desserts was the fuss and the fire. Since neither could get along with his or herself, how could they get along with each other? Not how he looks, how he is. She worked with what was in front of her. Said, I've had it now. I want it then. Wished them long life, good health, and gentle behavior. His life had been a commentary on a couple of pleasant afternoons he'd spent years ago with his friends. Gave me a big list of things he's not doing. And it's true, he's not doing them. But they're hair-raising things. Unmistakable signs of chagrin at not having been reborn, this time as a cat. The ape she dreamed of all her life, at last, in her embrace. Quite alone in the house, regaling herself with good wine, good food, and pleasant conversation. Be drunk always, said Mother Magdalena of the Sparrows. And is there a mystic theologian who would not understand what she meant? We have one rule around here, and that's that everyone should be nice to everyone else. Anyone who can't be nice to anyone else, get out. Devoted his first 87 years to building a matchstick cathedral. She may not know how to say aloha, but she knows how to say goodbye. Walked carefully along the path as though he were reading the Talmud in its stones. With her, it was thesis, antithesis, bam. Whatever it is, he's told himself, it's a lie. Father Sandor's diocese was the noosphere. A. First public statement. B. Pipe down. From a family of highly accomplished frauds, in her own unobtrusive way, she was trying to go straight. On the eve of her 188th birthday, not a soul in town she could break a wishbone with. I want you to meet my nephew. He's just gotten back from Mars. Rifled the handbag of her mind for a startling metaphor. He'd had to tie his mind, hand and foot, before he even tried to talk to Elna. Except for a few cats and an occasional friendly dog. I only talk to inanimate things like the wind, blind from birth, not understand what it means to be seen. If you have any idea at all of what it's like to be me, nothing you've ever said or done would give me a chance to think so. Tried to imagine what it might be like to act natural. Sam realized that he had become just one of the facts she was blinking. Helps me catch because he knows I'm trying to help. Would never speak a word that wasn't a regular one in town. It wasn't a matter of P's and Q's. She minded the whole alphabet. Looking at all the stones, he asked, "What do they wish to make of themselves?" Felt there was something in her loneliness that demanded respect and attention. Wanted to live in the world as though it had never been lived in before. Finally, believes. Believes, finally. Believes the universe is finally on track. At night, she pretends she's the city of Venice. Wide awake, watching the stars. Every time he went out, he brought her a flower. Every time he brought her a flower, she slapped him. Every time she slapped him, he brought her a flower. Every time he brought her a flower, bam! Smaller each moment, and further away. Two lights and their path. Imagining that you're here. Imagining that it's now. No reason for cloud. No reason for sun. Reason for cloud. Reason for sun. The family had been serious for generations. First, about one thing. Then, another. But always serious and sincere. She'd batted in and out of his life for years. Viewed through a chink in the hermit's wall. A luminous slice of melon in the night sky. Trying to discover something he already knew. Rediscover something he had already known. Trying to learn what his veins, his glands, his corpuscles were saying. Trying to pay attention to what his eyes already saw. Listening to the sounds that reached his ear, knowing what his fingertips were feeling. Being attuned to all these things was new. He wondered where he'd lived till all this happened. His dreams were the leaves of a hidden plant. He did what he could to let them flourish. Her, chalk it up to experience? There's no room left on the slate. Feed squirrels, said Mama, and the squirrels will love you. I did, and they did. Now, feed people, said Mama. I tried that, too. And married a perfectly lovely girl from Vale of Tears, Minnesota. He told me love was his middle name. And if he'd had any kind of a decent last name, I'd have married him. None of the novels she'd read in school had given her a clue as to what life might be about. Old lady walks up the street with straight branch for walking stick. Says, half to herself, half to a neighbor, if you're healthy, everything else can be fixed. Where is the doctor? Who is the doctor? What does the doctor say? Where you are is where you should be until you're somewhere else. The colloquialisms of an admirable tribe. To himself, as though to X. To X as though to himself. Play nicely, children, she'd say to us. Don't fight. During her 180 years, every act was part of a performance. Full consciousness and approval made each an act of her own. Some pleased him better than others. He tended to like them all. Rather, more conscious of what was being done than of who might be doing it. Not to be odd in such a world would in itself be odd. Saw it as a film she'd been called upon to act in all her life. Thoughts like T-shirt logos raced through his mind. Doesn't just look that way. He is. It had taken him all those years to discover that he hadn't, in fact, been talking just to himself. Whatever he said was spoken to all the world. Whatever he did was done to the whole of creation. Playing a game of chess with his nephew, but under the eye of every major network. Seemed to be flirting with something unseen, even unseeable, in the air. Closed his eyes to see. When he wants to see something clearly, he closes his eyes. She called it listening to Sam. He called it talking his ear off. Had given herself over completely to the art of visualizing the invisible. Felt that playing his fiddle as well as he could was the best he could do toward saving the whole situation. If you can't use it, fix it. Don't junk it. Fix it. Cathedral had fallen. They continued to visit the ruins. Had trained his words to jump through hoops like tigers. If there'd be no reason to play your harp badly in heaven, why do it on earth? It isn't just what you say, says the cat. It's the way you say it that matters to me. Didn't mind splitting the atom, but he balked at splitting hairs. Did you ask that question in any particular context? Not at board meetings, but at the country club. The rich have found ways of getting along with each other. Quietly, doing his task. Quietly, doing his work. Quietly, doing his task, his work. Encouraged the forces of opposition to stay in good fighting form. Each act at once deliberate and graceful. Kept improving the tone of things until she was flying through the air. Wadded up all over the room. They straightened them out, one after another, and read. Saw things as though he were watching a dream. Dreams as though he were watching the world. One in a dream. One in the world. One in the world. And one in a dream. As though I were a figure in one of her dreams. I'd talk, and she'd answer. But all in a dream. Who he was and who he'd been from the beginning. There is a source of talk inside of us all, and the whole idea is to free it. Not so much through much talking as through much writing into a notebook. The world is this. The world is that. The world is this. The world is that. People are this. People are that. People are this. People are that. The world is my home. My home is a shambles. Potted plants broke. Windows boarded over. Piano abducted for unpaid installments. A whole explosive world. A world of explosions. Every gesture ready to ignite a series of bombs. pyrotechnic whirling wheel. Seeds of fire. What he had to teach was silence. He was learning it through silence. He was learning it through quietness. Slowness. Learning through slowness. Long strands. Deep strands. Long roots. Deep roots. He had been struck with silence. Now, syllable by syllable, the words were returning. Listen to the stream. I remember Alfred Stieglitz lying in a back room of an American place, dictating his memoirs to a girl. I sit here talking into a microphone. Not memories, remembered phrases, wondering, not wondering, what to make of them. Remembered phrases and new ones formed in the mind. Uncle Charlie's sound effects journal. Bits of things from all over the world. The inner world, the outer world, the partly inner, partly outer world, partly in, partly out, Ridge Runners Railroad, Uncle Charlie's Railroad, Uncle Charlie's Iron Horse, Uncle Kentucky's Iron Horse Derby, Mom's significant apple pie. Make us a work or don't make us a work. Don't make us work. You do it. Make us one. I ain't gonna make you no work. I ain't gonna make myself none either. Ain't gonna make you no work. I ain't gonna make myself none either. Ain't just going to work. Ain't just going to play. Going to make the kind of work that's work and play. Going to make the kind of play that's play and work. Going to make play and work that's work and play. All right, let's roll up our sleeves and get down to the game. Are we working or playing? What do you care? Are we playing or working? All right. Let's get down to the job. The job is listening. The job is writing. The job is writing and listening. Listening and writing. Listening to what? Listening to what you hear. Writing what? Writing what you've heard. What do you hear now? Just that. Just what? Just that. Just what? Just that. I hear two words, just that. And I write them down. This'll never do. What'll never do? Listening and hearing. Hearing and writing. Don't you think it'll ever do? Listening to the inner stream. But what could it be trying to say? What could it be wanting to say? If I knew what it wanted to say, I could say it myself. It has something it wants to say, but it doesn't want to say it just every minute. Doesn't want to say it just any old way. Wants to wait for just the right moment. Wants to say it in just the right way. That isn't literature. That's life. What's life? That's life. What's life? That's life. You mean that life is life? What else would I mean? What else do you feel like saying? It's not that I feel like saying anything, but something inside me is saying itself. And if I give it a chance, I'll hear what it is. What do you think it could be? Some possible complaint. Complaint about what? About how the whole thing, the whole adventure, is going. Adventure? That's a new thought. The whole evolution, if that's what you like. Some possible word on how it all seems to be going. Didn't I hear you say evolution? All right. On how it's evolving. Is that what you mean? A progress report? On some kind of evolution? Is that what you're hoping to hear? What if you heard something like, we've just turned the corner. Apes are getting to be men. What good do you think that would do you? It would just be a word on the state of the art, the state of the nation, the state of the world. It might give us some idea of how we were doing. Another notebook and poems. Not shadow of earth, not shadow of earth, our own bewilderment darkens the sun. Are we doing what we should be doing? Are we even beginning to do what we should be doing? A day that doesn't end. A night that doesn't end. Day that ends with a final heartbeat. Night that ends with a last drawn breath. Have we been told? Are we always being told? Is one man's truth another man's untruth? If we seek, will we find? If we knock, will it be opened? Big M, big child, his way is blessed, not put to test. Moon, tree, hill, sea, land, cloud, star. In tiny gold pencil, on watered bond, a list of her complaints, photos, domestic scenes, buildings collapsing in slow motion, Junior's dreams. On the hill, proud columns in process of disintegration. A guessing game in which he was always the loser, the winner, in which his wins and losses were just about equal. Any few visible objects that hang together have a meaning, or meanings, will have a discoverable meaning. By the time an inner voice comes back to us on a talk show, it's a very made-up, false eyelashed thing. First he makes them up, then he destroys them. Here's some notes about a dancer. The dancer moves through a series of conventional poses. But being a good dancer, she does it well. They're as fixed as the frames of a film. But as she moves through them, they become flowing. Not even a pause is rigid. It is only the crest of a wave, or its nadir. The dancer's language is fixed as a series of signals. And yet, what she says is new. In each round of her dancing. Every moment of her life makes her older than she was. And yet, every movement adds to her youth. She is a dancer, one dancer, and in being one dancer is all.
I wait for you when I'm awake. I wait for you when I'm asleep. What's the difference between waking and sleeping, I wonder? As long as I'm doing the same thing, whichever I do. If all I can do is wait, why should I wonder? Why wonder if I'm waiting for something or nothing? For someone or no one, for you or for no one at all. He'll come, she'll come, and life will begin. He'll come, she'll come, and all the reason for waiting will be made clear. I wait because I was meant to wait. I obey an inner commandment that tells me to do it. Obey an inner commandment, or just respond to an inner desire. I don't think I know which it is. When I wait, the many strands of my mind are brought together to a single point, like the fine, soft bristles of a watercolor brush. Like a votive candle, waiting to be picked up and lit. Dark column in darkness. Dark column of prayer, of waiting, of attention drawn fine to a single point. A single white point of attention. A single glow. A needle point of light. Total confusion. Total chaos. Nearly total confusion, near chaos, the impossibility of finding a path through the ruins. At the bottom of a well, looking up at the night sky, waiting for the moon. July 4th, 1984, Lipsos. Big peace. The poor little animal strives for the light. Poor little animals strive for the light. That's where their home is. Out of dark waters, struggling toward light. In a globe of dark waters, wriggling toward light. That's where their home is. Up out of dark water, struggling toward light. Conclusion. No conclusion. A sign that says go on. Are you sure you're not lost? Who'd be lost? Lost on the way to wherever? Martial forces. Call all the little tykes together from their dark corners. Benny, is that her name? With her new frizzed out Watusi hair. Spanish, brought here from afar. Her husband, a seaman. quiet island, quieter island. Valenti's small boy, tanned, oval face, intensely observant eye. Courage, no tendency to run away. Where are you from, he says. No. What is your name? Nikita, old man, courageous, has been racked with the grip. Sits outside his house. His wife brings him coffee in late afternoon. He calls me from 3 doors in on a little side street. It looks as though we respect each other as old warriors. Any two old men in Greece are likely to have that kind of regard for each other. When they give him arthros, blessed bread, at the church, he wraps it in a clean handkerchief and carries it home. His wife and he will eat it with coffee. I like M.L.'s paragraphs, joining many things, distant in space and time, gracefully. Thrust, drive, and so forth. Louis, Picasso, Merton. Dodgem cars and whirligigs. The Sitwells. The massive grain elevator. Joyce. Universal Amphitheater. Dante. Everything gets nowhere. Everything gets somewhere. Everything gets nowhere fast. Everything gets somewhere slowly. Cookie cutter, cookie batter. Form is form, and matter, matter. Cookie batter, cookie cutter. Flour is flour. Butter is butter. Lots of flour, little butter. Passing world, abiding world, world of things, world of appearances, measurable things, abiding things, immeasurable things, passing things, the ephemeral is measurable. The abiding is. Infinity, unmeasurable. The countable, the uncountable, the countless, the nameable, the unnameable. A thing, once named, becomes a thing. Reification. The reification of the unreal. The slave adores his chains. He who was born in jail remembers jail. That of which there is neither that nor which abides. The infinite, the numberless, the countless, the one in the family who has a feeling for all of the family. The absolutely finite, the absolutely infinite, genetic code is everything codified, asking what life is all about is like asking what a violin string is all about. Unless you can find someone to play a tune on it, you'll never know the answer. Talking about things too high for me. Talking about things too low for me. Talking about things too banal for anyone. Thinking it might be a good idea to talk things on tape instead of writing them down. Then listen to the tape, and if I hear anything I like, write that down. Why talk at all? Why write at all? Every once in a while a phrase comes along that I like. If something comes along that I like, if I really like it, I'm likely to like it for quite a long time. If something comes along that comes as a clarification, it's sure to have a value, at least for me. The kind of thing I do is just sounding off. But if you can't sound off to yourself, who can you talk to? I find I'm talking at least in part to a couple of my friends on the wall. Merton's there in 2 pictures. So's the Dalai Lama. So is Moskos Labovardos. Maybe their wise, smiling countenances will keep me from saying anything too absurd. Maybe not. There's a good picture of a New Orleans jazz band, too. Maybe I should talk to them for a while. What makes me so eager to talk at all, and to talk to myself? I think that part of it is something we haven't talked about before. The idea that really everything in the universe is talking. Everything, just as part of its being, is also expressing itself, is also being itself, and in one sense or another, it's talking. And so that we too, whether we're being silent or talking, are talking in that sense. We are talking in the same way that a spark is talking in being itself, and just being a spark, and a human being and being a being is also talking, whether, as I said, whether he's silent or talking, he is giving out, and giving out something of himself and from his center into the universe. And I suppose at the same moment that he's giving something out of himself, as we say, of himself, into the universe, something is coming into him. And the more he gives out, the more comes in. Can all this be proved? I don't know about proving it, but I think that it's a feeling, a pretty general feeling that people have, that all things give out their energy and take in new energy, give out new energy and take in new energy. And some of our energy goes out in talk, and a lot of it goes out in talk that is undirected, some that's misdirected, and some that's properly directed, some that's directed in a natural way. And I think the hope is to find something that goes out of us in a natural way, is properly directed in that sense, and flows as the rest of our actual being does. When talking becomes a little like exhaling and inhaling, and when it's as much a part of us as all our other natural functions, and if it's in good working order, then either our speech or our silence has value as a kind of witness to our being. And what's so exciting about our being? Our being is exciting, if not to ourselves or to our immediate circle. It's exciting simply because we are part of a whole creation, which is exciting, or which most of us find exciting, which I find exciting. And if we can become, to ourselves, to each other, to have as much interest as microbes have under a microscope, under a glass, if we can have as much interest to ourselves and to each other as the stars have for us, we're already beginning to come to an appreciation of our own value as parts of a universe. We may not be exciting as parts of a society or as members of a club. We may be the least exciting member in our own clubs. But as beings in the universe, we have another sort of status. And it is as beings in the universe that we should be talking and could be talking. And we get to be talking like beings in the universe when we find some central stream in us that wishes to talk, wishes to find the words for its particular message, its particular energy. And finding those words and finding that stream can be a life's work, but a valuable one. Anyone who finds it, I think, finds it not only for himself, but for a number of other people who are attuned to his sort of energy, to his kind of vocabulary, and his or hers. And so that just as our works of art express us, our conversation can express us, particularly if it is conversation, particularly if it has the purity that we can think of something like an inner monologue as having. or as a dialogue between friends, a conversation between friends. I think that a lot of conversations in social situations, some of them get to be pretty pure too, and others get to be pretty far off the track, pretty far off anything that we could call a natural track. And so in talking alone in a room, talking to pictures of your friends, maybe someone like me at least has more of a chance of saying what he means, of getting clear even for himself what he means, than if he's talking in a social situation where he interrupts others and others interrupt him, and neither one answers. It's not a matter of questions and answers or of one conversation having anything to do with another. In this case, we are talking, this is one person talking to himself or to themselves, and only interrupting himself. Even at that, one interrupts oneself pretty often. But perhaps through this kind of search for an inner stream of expression, one would slowly arrive at something that began to make progressively more sense. To get back to this business about value as being, it seems to me you could be the dullest member of your bridge club and still be a very exciting item in the universe, because members of your bridge club see you one way and the universe sees you another. I guess it would be possible, though, to come up with the same score in both games. And that is not what matters. What matters, to be rhetorical about it, is to find the very pulse at the center of your life and see if you can find appropriate words in whatever language you speak to go with it. What if the appropriate word turned out to be That would leave you saying for the rest of your life, which wouldn't be bad. It wouldn't be if you had arrived at it at the end of an earnest search, if you came upon it naturally and as a real thing, if you really discovered that expressed best what you were saying at center, in essence, in reality. If you arrived at it that way, it would be a much better thing than if you had simply decided to say it and say it and say it. In that sense, forcing it on yourself. How do you know when you're saying things naturally and when you're forcing them on yourself? It takes discernment. It takes practice. Sometimes you can't tell, or it becomes very difficult to know. Your rate of success is not what should count most in this endeavor. What should count is keeping the goal in mind and having some confidence in it as a goal. The goal is some sort of basic, essential, natural expression, changing from moment to moment, but still being true to one's essential being. Achieving something like that would not just be a matter of having good intentions, though they would count. But I think it would be a matter of a great deal of perseverance and practice. It would involve a great deal of perseverance and practice. In what? In speaking truthfully, in saying quite clearly what you mean, saying it clearly enough for all to understand, saying it clearly enough, at least, for you yourself to understand. Would you be able to talk about everything in the world? I think you'd be lucky if you were able to talk about even a very few things. But to talk about them clearly and from the heart. Now I'll read from a notebook again, July 29. A desert father says, if a man lives in a place and doesn't bear the fruit of it, the place itself throws him out. Live on an island, bear the fruit of the island. Live in the universe, fruit of the universe. Live in the mind of the Most High, bear his fruit. Live in all three at once, bear whatever fruit may be implanted in you. It's good to deal with what happens each day. Each day is new. Details are interesting. The danger always of not seeing forest for trees. Why see forest? Why look at trees? Part of our engagement in the universe, being where you are, doing what you're doing, knowing where you are, and what you're doing. People who seem to know where they are and what doing may just know it. Know both of those things in the small plan. Not at all how that small plan fits into a larger one. It gives them a semblance of sanity. It helps them fit into and function with. It helps them fit into and function within the small plan. It even allows them to mature within the small plan, maybe even to grow beyond it, becoming able to handle more advanced matters from having learned to handle the elementary ones. They may be people who've had no orientation at all toward higher matters, were born into a world of practical details and learned early how to work with them. But what if you've been raised from the beginning, as many people are, with an interest in higher concerns, and with no particular training in handling practical things? Should you stick to the higher things and neglect the practical? Or should you attempt to run along two tracks until you're competent at both? A question to be resolved by one individual being after another. Seek first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added. Seek heaven first. And where is heaven? The kingdom of heaven is within. Look inward, therefore, and perhaps in doing it, you can learn the advice of Socrates, too. Was he quoting Solon? Know thyself. Come to know thyself. Attempt, with patience, to know thyself. So, how bear the fruit of the place you're living in? Seek first the kingdom of heaven. And does it only confuse this counsel if we add one which may have its basis too in the Bible, about attempting with patience to know thyself. Basis in the Bible? Well, there's this, for example. You're warned against seeing the mote in your brother's eye and not the beam in your own. It's only in knowing yourself that you can become aware of the beam in your own. Seek first the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within. That seems to be all the counsel we need to begin with and to return to, often, on a regular basis. That seems to be all the counsel we need to begin with and to return to often, on a regular basis. How seek the kingdom of heaven, which is within? Seek peace and pursue it. That's another good counsel. In seeking the kingdom of heaven, are we seeking peace? I bring not peace, but a sword, says Jesus. But he is called the Prince of Peace. I will not cease from mental fight, says Blake, until we build Jerusalem on England's pleasant shore. Mental fight. Are we talking of mental swords? He who lives by the sword, says Jesus, in telling Peter to put his steel one away, will die by the sword. So if we seek peace and pursue it, we may have to seek it through mental fight. Where does a mental fight take place? In the minds of one or in the minds of many? In the mind of one or in the minds of many? I suppose in both, and eventually in all arenas. What are mental fights about? They are about many matters, and the point of them all is to arrive at the truth. Do you find a tendency in yourself to try to live by adages? I try to find good ones in a broad survey and see if they can be lived by. Much attentive listening to the inner stream, and then careful writing into a notebook. Who am I? Nothing. Where am I? Nowhere. Is it true that I am no one, nothing, nowhere? I try to be sensible. I wander from sense. I live in the imagination. What is this imagination that I live in? My friends are sensible. I'm sensible with them. But when I'm alone, I wander through space, through imaginary spaces. The life of reality is good because it gives a chance to the imagination. Imagination is the reward for living sensibly within the real world. How real is the real world? Not very real. Even though its troubles are. Its pains are, too. The real's a taking off place for the imagination. Promises are made and fulfilled within the realm of the imaginary, of the imagination. What is the imagination? A realm above the real. This is a line I find in brackets. At birth, I was swaddled in dark superstition. A short editorial. Every moment, a moment of decision. Opt once in favor of the good, then full steam ahead. More advice. Do with mythology. Do without mythology. Do with a little mythology. But don't try to swallow too much. Waiting for someone. Waiting for no one. Waiting for one thing. Waiting for many. A man, a woman, a child, a child, several men, several women, a number of boys and girls. More advice. Concentrate on finding something to concentrate on. Or make a statement clear enough to permit of contradiction. Fighting your way up and out of dark superstition. A memoir. New York was self-improvement land. I did what I could to stay with the crowd. Learned tennis and swimming and read book reviews. Whoever I talked to was there to tell me the enjoyment of life was my duty. Philosophic poem. What's good? What's bad? What's good? What's bad? What's good does this? What's bad does that? Who's good? Who's good? Who's bad? Who's bad? Who's good does good? Who's bad does bad? This is a moralistic rhyme. From what he said, I knew that he was not as pure and clean as me. In my reply, I let him know that I was high and he was low. Now, these are ruminations on matters of belief. I can't take the one story. I can't take the other. I can take the one, but I can't take the other. I might take both. I might take neither. I'll try to take the one. I'll see about the other.